Wow, my whipped cream failed. Oh my goodness. All right, wait, chill. Before you go right ahead into, but you told us this recipe is super stable and all of that, it's good and all of that. What happened? Let me gist you. Let me tell you what happened. Something happened that caused my whipped cream to fail, and I'll be using that as a base or the basis of my teaching for today. So in today's video, just as you've seen, we'll be talking about frosting failures. Why your whipped cream can fail, why your Swiss Meringue Buttercream fails, why your buttercream can fail, and things like that, okay? But like I said, something happened that caused my whipped cream to fail. So it's not like the recipe is bad, the recipe is not good. I used it a couple of days ago, and I'm even going to insert a video of how long I was able to keep it for this particular weekend. Although I've put up on my community tab for how long I've been able to keep it, like 2 days plus. And I had also someone say she's been able to keep it for 5 days or thereabouts. I would confirm and let you know. One of my subscribers said she tried out the recipe, kept it at room temperature just to test it and see how long it would stay, how stable it was, and how long it would stay without falling off. And I think she was able to do that for 5 days. I was able to do mine for 2 days plus before the cake got exhausted and we finish the cake. So the recipe is super good, super stable, but something happened that caused it to fail. So if this is something you're interested in learning, then you definitely want to keep on watching. But before that, let me apologize for not being here like I should. My schedule got super busy, and then there's been some Niger factors in between that have not allowed me that have not allowed me or given me the liberty to shoot videos and record like I should. So please bear with me. I will try to work on this and I'll work on my schedule basically, because I have nothing to do. I have no power over the Niger factor. So I'm going to try to work and have more videos sent across to you. Now, if there are things that you'd like to learn, do not hesitate to let me know in the comments as we jump right into this video. And you're welcome back. So I'll be sharing some reasons why your frosting fails. I'll be looking at buttercream, not too much into buttercream. I have a complete video on that, why you have buttercream issues. So you can check that out if you've not yet watched that video. I'm going to insert the link probably in the description or somewhere up in the screen. So you want to check that video out, but I'll be looking majorly at the whipped cream based on my personal experience and also Swiss Meringue Buttercream, okay? So let's go right into these reasons without further ado. Number one is this, your buttercream. Now, your buttercream can fail because you have too much liquid in it, okay? If you have too much liquid in it, it will become runny, the consistency will become light, and that will end up messing up your cake. It can fall off your cake. Your buttercream designs can fall off your cake. It doesn't even apply to particular designs. You can do a combed cake or a perfectly smoothly scraped cake, and it will just peel off the body of the cake because there is something wrong with your buttercream, because your buttercream has failed and probably wasn't prepared right. Okay, so you want to check, ensure that you have a good recipe, and also do not use too much liquid in your buttercream. Use exactly what the recipe calls for, and just see how to make it work, okay? So another reason why your buttercream can fail is that you probably overbeat your buttercream. Not probably, if you overbeat your buttercream, you're going to have air bubbles in it. So there are not so much failures in terms of failures that I can talk about when it comes to buttercream. But like I said, I have a full video that you can watch if you want to learn about buttercream issues and how to fix them. Okay, so let's go into my story. And I'm looking at whipped cream fails and why, or what can make your whipped cream not come out the way it's supposed to be. Okay, so I was at work on this particular day. I had a whipped cream cake to work on, and I had measured 500 grams, put into my mixing bowl, and my bowl was cold. Like I prepare, like my recipe calls for. You put the bowl in the freezer and the balloon whisk as well that you're going to use. Put it in the freezer so it will chill a bit. Now I am aware that there are recipes that call for you using room temperature water, you using a bowl that's not be put in the fridge, but that is not the recipe I work with, okay? So if that's what your recipe calls for, you can work with that, all well and good, no issues, but ensure that you stick to recipes, okay? So stick to recipes. If you don't stick to recipes, things would go wrong, okay? But I stuck to my recipe, so I measured 500 grams because I'm going to work on an 8-inch cake, and when I put on the mixer, I stepped away from it, put my water and everything, the whipped cream powder, and I stepped away from it. I noticed, I observed that it wasn't sounding well. Okay, the beating wasn't sounding the way it was supposed to sound. It was like fluctuating somehow. It will go low, come high. You know, if you're used to a particular thing, or if you have a particular gadget, equipment, and there's a particular way it works, there's a certain way it works, If it is off, you would definitely know. All right, so I knew that something was wrong, but I really couldn't place. It wasn't really obvious. But then I moved closer again and I saw that it wasn't beating as fast as it should, but I had no clue of what was happening or what was wrong. At the end of the day, I beat this thing for 5 minutes like I would, but I observed that the texture was different, and I also observed that it did not double in size. Like the size did not increase, there was no increase in the size. It was just not looking all right. And then I realized that my whipped cream had failed, but I just couldn't place it. I was wondering, did I not measure this thing well? Did I make a mistake in the measurements? Did I make a mistake in the recipe? What could have gone wrong? Until my staff pointed something out to me. And she told me that the current wasn't fine. I think I was trying to just ask questions, troubleshoot, and basically get to know what was wrong, or what would have happened. And I checked the lights also. I think my staff pointed out to me, or I checked and saw that it wasn't full. The voltage wasn't full, and that was the culprit. That was what affected my whipped cream, because I wasn't able to beat on high speed. Basically, I wasn't able to beat on high speed, and the mixer just wasn't working well. Okay, so she showed me the current was low, obviously, so I had to do it again, because it wasn't just okay, it was stretchy. It was just somehow not the way my whipped cream was supposed to turn out. Okay, and this is the video of, these are the clips, just as you can see. So I decided to make another batch, and in doing that I had to turn on my gen. Okay, I had to turn on my gen so that I'll have a full voltage and I'll be able to work right. And I did it the second time and it worked out well. And this is the cake that I decorated with it. And even because it was on a Saturday, I decorated this cake. It was to be picked the following morning. I decorated it, kept overnight, and absolutely nothing happened to it. So the recipe is good, fantastic, stable, like I said, but things like this can cause your recipe to fail. So what are the things that can cause your whipped cream recipe to fail? Things like this: voltage. If you're somewhere like I am in Nigeria, voltage can cause your whipped cream to fail, or not beating it as fast as you should, or on high speed like you should. Things like the electricity, power can affect your whipped cream. From my experience, that was what I learned. Okay, so please ensure that you're working with full voltage, that everything is intact, everything is right before you start making your whipped cream. The other thing I'll be talking about is, just as I've mentioned before, sticking to the recipes. If you're not sticking to your recipe, it will fail. Okay, if you don't stick to what the book says, your recipe won't turn out right. I can tell you this for sure from experience. I had one recently, not with the first thing, maybe I'll share later after now, because I just recently got to know that I've been making a mistake all along, and this has been affecting my cake. Okay, so it not only applies to frostings, it applies to cakes as well. Stick to the recipe. If you don't stick to the recipe, you're going to run into issues. Okay. Now, another thing I'll be talking about when it comes to your whipped cream, why it would fail, is because you're not sticking to temperature. So if your recipe calls for a certain temperature or calls for a certain method, and maybe like you're asked to put the bowl in the freezer and you decide not to put the bowl in the freezer, or you're supposed to use very cold water, you didn't use very cold water, these are the things that can happen. Because in my case, I think the only thing that happened was voltage. I used ice cold water, I used a cold bowl, but I did not beat on high speed, and not because of my own making, because of the voltage. So you need to check all those things. These are reasons why your whipped cream recipe can fail. Now, before I end this video, let me quickly do one on Swiss Meringue Buttercream. This is a very, very delicate frosting medium. Okay, it's very delicate, and if you're not working with the right recipe, if you don't prepare it right, it's fickle. If you don't prepare it right, things can go wrong in the twinkling of an eye, right? So you want to ensure that everything is right. Now I'll be looking at reasons why your whipped cream fails. Reasons why your Swiss Meringue Buttercream would fail or fails. Number one is your temperature. So for some of these first things that we use, temperature is very important. Okay, so you're supposed to have your butter and sugar beat to a certain, not butter and sugar. You're supposed to have your sugar and egg whites beat to a certain level or a certain temperature. For recipes that use thermometer to measure the temperature, please stick to it. If you don't stick to it, things will go wrong. Okay, so that you stick to the temperature or you stick to consistency. You have to know at what point you should add what into your recipe. Okay, that's a Swiss Meringue Buttercream. Another thing is that you're using buttercream, or you're using, why am I mixing this thing up? So another thing is that you're using butter that is not specific to the recipe. I'm saying this because I have learned how to make Swiss Meringue Buttercream 3 times. I've gone for 3 different classes, okay, and now I can make it well. I can make it and make it well. I even did a class on it last month, okay. So I've gone for classes on Swiss SMBC 3 times, and for these different classes, I can remember the last 2 clearly. The last, I think one was 2 years ago, and the other one was last year in 2020. So the one I attended 2 years ago, the butter calls for cold butter. It calls for cold, like it has to be cold. It shouldn't melt. So if I wanted to make my Swiss Meringue buttercream and I've kept my butter out for so long, I'll just be fidgeting, or I have to send it back to the fridge or to the freezer so that it gets cold and really solid before I use it. The third recipe doesn't call for very cold butter. Butter should be room temperature. Not totally melty room temperature, but room temperature in a way that if I put my finger into it, it would make it would dent the buttercream, so I can press into it, but it should not be so solid cold. So know what recipe you're using and stick to it. So if the butter is supposed to be room temperature, it should be room temperature. If the butter is supposed to be cold, let it be cold. If it's supposed to be this, let it be this. Just follow the recipe as it states and you won't run into any issues whatsoever. Okay, now another thing is the quality of butter that you use. From what I was taught, the butter should have at least 80 to 82% fat. If it doesn't have this quantity or level or amount of fat in it, the SMBC may not work. Okay, so you need to have a certain level of butter in it and you need to stick to it. If you do not stick to it, it's going to fail. It won't come out right. Okay, so check the pack of the butter you're getting for your SMBC before you use it. All right, whatever brand you're using, first of all, get a quality brand and then check the quantity of butter so that you know that you're on the safe side before you go ahead to work with it. I wasn't only taught this in class, I've also heard it on YouTube. So you should have a high amount of fat in it if you want to use it for your SMBC. And another thing is something I've mentioned in passing. Make sure that you beat your sugar and your egg whites to a certain amount. So with whipped cream, with SMBC, please bear with me. With SMBC, your sugar is supposed to be completely dissolved before you proceed to make your meringue. If not, it will fail. Another thing I just remembered is your bowl. If your bowl is not clean, it'll fail. If your bowl is stained, just know that your meringue will not form. Another thing I also remember just now is your egg white should not have any trace of yolk in it. If it happens that way, believe me, it will not form. Last year, one day I was preparing SMBC and it failed woefully. It failed woefully. My meringue did not form. I had to do it all over again. Why? Because when I was breaking my eggs, I had egg yolk in it. I tried taking it out, but I think I wasn't really successful with that because I tried making my meringue and it just did not form. So these are the things you should note, and these are the reasons why your frostings, whipped cream, buttercream, SMBC can fail. I hope that this video has been of value to you and I hope that you gained something from it. Please let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced any of these issues or had any of this challenge with your frostings, and what did you do to solve it? What was the high point of this video for you? Did you learn anything from it? Please let me know in the comments as well. Please don't forget to like this video, to share with your friends, and also to subscribe to my channel if you're yet to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. Until I see you in the next video, stay happy, stay safe, and stay blessed. You